ready, hold tight.
Hold on to your hats, boys.
Libos.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week.
Just what the flipping Nora are you all lot doing?
I'm still in there. I'm still right behind him.
It was just a very well thought out tactical plan by Danny.
I want to go!
I can literally feel the steam coming out your ears.
So it's like a fun little post-game snack.
For Wednesday Week! Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week. Hello from the other side edition. This midweek, Wednesday night, we're away at Swansea. We're off to what they call Abertawe in...
Hello from the other side.
Tonight, joining me, I've got Luke from SwansCast. How's it going, Paul? You all right? Welcome
Yeah,
back.
brilliant. Thanks for having me back on again. A bit better after the weekend than I would have been if you asked me last week.
It's been a tumultuous time the last 6 games to Swansea. Let's get right into it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a tough old January for the Swans, right?
Well, yeah, it's been a tough year, to be honest. So, like, obviously, I know we're only in February now, but it feels like a long time, considering Christmas time we were kind of riding a bit of a high wave. And now, well, what's that, a month and a half later, a little bit longer than that maybe, and that's definitely come crashing down for whatever reason. And then January didn't help, but I think there's a lot of ongoings around the club that might have contributed to maybe some of the failings in January, and don't know, there's a lot to be said. I'm sure there'd be a lot of communication about it over time, or maybe not enough.
Do you feel something's on the horizon then? Do you feel something's coming, like a big announcement of some description?
Not necessarily. I just think that when it's that bad, you expect something to be addressed. There's going to be a fans forum, I think, next week. So we'll see what they have to say to address some
now,
of the shortcomings.
Tell me about your fans forums, because we're the king of crap fans forums. I mean, you can't come in here with your Johnny Come Recently fans forum chats and you know what I mean, and bring it over here. But how do yours go, as it were? How do they pan out?
I think they're normally all right. Like, they come across as quite honest, but I think the problem is they say all the right things in them, but things like this January now is when it highlights how valuable those words are. And I think everyone's of the opinion that they're not that valuable at the moment. And I think that's where we are now. So the next one is a case of well, you said all the right things last time, but we didn't see the actions match up to what you said before. So,
Wow.
What's the situation? I think that's what the questioning is going to be this time. So I think, there's always been frustrations in past ones, but they've been addressed in a good way. They sell a good sell. But we haven't had the ownership team in maybe long enough to, maybe we're a bit earlier along than where you are in regards to the current ownership to sort of say they've been horrendous. But actions have got to back up whatever's spoken, haven't they? So it depends, if they say all the right things again and then fail again in the summer, and it's a repeated theme, I think then it's easy to say the fans forums are a load of rubbish, isn't it? But yeah, we'll see. This one is going to be an important one, I think.
It could well be, because there are a lot of workings that not the average football fan in the street will understand, in terms of financial stability, the fact that whether people want to move to your club anyway. We got linked with 1,000 people in January and signed 2.
Yeah,
3, 3 including Shay Charles. So there's an element of, do we really understand it? But you said it was the ownership team. And the interesting thing there is, are they actually after feedback? Because I've said to a number of fans on this show specifically that our chairman's not after it. He just wants to address what's been said about him online, rather than actually going, hey, do you know what? That's a solid point. I'll take that on board. It never happens. I mean, do you feel like you get that from your ownership team?
No, I think they come across really well. This is why I think everyone's so frustrated at the moment, because I think they sold a good sell and everyone was on board with it. I know everyone feels a bit burnt by the fact that January was so poor. There's been mistakes in the past in January windows and other windows where they've left it too late or haven't brought people in when they said they were going to, and they've said they've learned all the lessons. The ownership team we've got now bought out the previous one, even though he was in place as the chairman under the previous regime. He bought him out. That only happened in November. So it was his first one. And I know it looks like it's the same old, even though he said he was going to fix all the problems. That's kind of where we are. And there's been a few things addressed from the January window by Luke Williams in the pre-match press conference for the last match against Bristol. That's the only communication we've had about it. And he basically said that I think they got caught out a little bit by a lack of experience amongst the people involved in the dealings around transfers at board level. The chairman perhaps got involved on the last day after being a bit like, why has nothing happened up to this point? And was running around like a bit of a headless chicken by all accounts. And ultimately, we only got one deal over the line instead of potentially 3 that we're looking at coming in. And it also looked like maybe we got played a little bit by either players or agents selling us. The deal was done when actually it wasn't. You know what I mean? So I think the word Luke Williams used was we got duped by the player. One of the ones that came in, because he was ultimately at our training ground the day before deadline day. All of the agreements were in place. All that was left was the player, agreeing and signing the contract, and then he just never came back. So,
wow,
that was Jason Wright. I think that's his name. He's gone to Norwich in the end. So, whether he was just trying to get a better deal for himself elsewhere, raise interest, I don't know. But I think the learning was meant to be, it's not done until it's done, and we need to act a bit more quick and make sure things happen rather than trust in what someone's saying. You know what I mean? Like, until that is signed, anything can happen. And I think we've just fallen on the wrong side of that.
It's been so you say they came in November, the full takeoff happened in November. They've not been in situ along, but I guess what you're saying is you've not seen any actions sort of saying this is how we're going to address these things, right?
Well, they've said it before. They've said it like before the January window and after past January windows. There's been a lot of talk about data-driven approaches to recruitment and how they've put the infrastructure in place for all of those things.
All this sounds so familiar.
But every transfer window is like, oh, we need to do better, we need to do this, we need to do that, or like, this wasn't quite right, or, currently we don't have a sporting director in place that they've been searching for one since sacking the last one a couple of months ago. And apparently there's one due to come in the next couple of weeks, but the fact that he wasn't in place is now an excuse, do you know what I mean? So yeah, they've said all of these things before. Like last January, I think they talked about the data-driven thing, and we signed Ronald, and he's been all right, to be fair. And they were like, look, he's one of the players we've identified from this new system. Then in the summer, we got a few more targeted signings, and mostly they've been okay as well. Less of them, but the ones brought in, they've had a decent impact, 1 or 2 more than others. But again, it's like, oh, look, it's working. Here's some good examples. So we're always looking for players in the background. It's always ongoing, our recruitment process. But then you get to January and you leave anything to deadline day. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, you had all month. You're saying it's happening in the background all the time. So why did it take you to deadline day to start pursuing these deals, which there's always a risk they're not gonna happen when you leave it so late in the day? That's I think what the issue is.
All sounds so familiar. This is absolutely fascinating. That it's not just you. I mean, the fact that, for example, today as we're recording this, John Eustace has left Blackburn Rovers to go to Derby County.
That's crazy
for what seems like a paltry amount of 500k, and it's pure insanity to me. I can't see what's happening, but that says a lot about their ownership. So
you're leaving the 6th place team to go to a team in the relegation zone. That is mad. Yeah. That's got to be unheard of.
Yeah, he must be on a chunk of a bonus to keep him up. But that's not our knitting, and no. It seems that someone else has got crap owners like we have. So So let's talk about last time we met. Let's talk about Swansea season, how it's gone. I assume not as you anticipated as the summer came around.
To be honest, I thought we were in for a bit of a transitional middle of the road season. That's what I expected. We had a bit of a tough year last year, which we ended up finishing better off than what it felt in terms of what we saw for a lot of the year. Like 3 managers, one of them was a caretaker, but his stint was over a month long. So his and the Christmas period where there's a lot of games. So we consider it 3 managers because of how long he was there. Mm-hmm. Different play styles, throughout that. And initial recruitment for the first manager who got sacked. And then that recruitment didn't necessarily suit the style of the manager that came in. So a lot of change, and then obviously he had the summer window to try and correct some of that. So I was expecting a bit of a middle of the road season where we would find our feet, we'd have ups and downs, a bit of a roller coaster. I just wanted to progress from last year, be a bit more stable, and build a platform maybe for next year. Do you know what I mean? So I think I had us down as 12th. And to be honest, for 16th now, it's not like massively out of reach.
It's only it's only 4 points away.
No, and if you ask us like a month, like as a Christmas time, we were knocking on the door of the top 6. So crazy how the championship changes. So I guess you could argue that I'm quite spot on, depending on how it goes for the rest of the season. Yeah. We've had a bit of a bad spell now. Hopefully that is the bad spell of the year. Do you know what I mean? And we can stabilize again. And I think if we do that, maybe looking around mid-table is probably fair. So
it's the teams around you though that absolutely when you see them flash up, you're one of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put them in my accumulator on a Saturday. You know what I mean? Like Millwall, QPR, Coventry, Preston. I look at those guys and I'm like, nah, they could get spanked 5-0. They could win 3-0. I'm not touching it.
But like for the first half of the season, and obviously we play everyone once. So we played everyone once, right? And we only lost. We didn't lose a game by more than 1 goal in the entire first round of fixtures. Which that's for me, that was like, oh, that's a really good foundation. Like I was skeptical early days that we weren't just getting lucky. But I think when you get 22 games in or 24, what's halfway? 22?
24. You've put me on the spot there. 23.
So, okay, 23. I was inside. 23 games in.
23 games in.
Yeah. And we hadn't lost a game by more than 1 goal. I was like, okay, when you do it for that long, you've got to start giving the team and the defense and the setup and shape a bit of credit. We hadn't always been great scoring, but I guess we were always in matches. Like when you've only lost games by 1 goal margin, there's always a chance of nicking a point. And then all of a sudden, there was some speculation about a manager going to West Brom. The next game after that came out, we went to Portsmouth on New Year's Day, maybe. And we got spanked 4-0, like out of nowhere. Like and people say like, oh, the speculation, like, it's just speculation. No one really knows what happened there. I can't tell you how drastic the difference in our form from before that speculation to after it has been, because literally look at our form in 2025, because that's after the speculation. We won our first game last weekend, and it's been dire. We've been spanked a few times. We got spanked by Southampton in the Cup, which fair enough.
The Cardiff game after that.
We got spanked by Cardiff, our big rivals, which that's not good enough. Ultimately,
yeah, because you look as a local derby, don't you? And
exactly.
And even if you don't fancy it, you're like, just don't embarrass yourself, lads.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? We lost 1-0 to the other side of the city earlier on this season, and we lost 1-0. It was a terrible, dour, shit game of football. We lost 1-0 to a team with parachute payments. We can walk away with some kind of dignity, but with that one there, a beating like that, he's done well to keep his job, hasn't he?
I know, but this is what I said before that game, after the West Brom, because ultimately, right, no one's ever going to know the facts. That is true. He was going. He was gone. I have it on good authority that he was gone. And West Brom essentially pulled out of the 9th hour.
Right.
But the problem was he spoke about it very weirdly in the press twice, failed to shut down the links, kind of opened them up, if anything, put himself in a shop window, and kind of the term that was going around was he was basically twerking for West Brom in the press. And then they pulled out like last minute. It was quite an in sync. Journalists on X like posting, oh yeah, no, West Brom are not interested, they're going a different way, quite in sync within like an hour. A few of them, the reputable ones, all came out and said that in one go, as if like, for me, he looked very organised from the club to distance themselves, like West Brom now. And all of a sudden he wasn't going. And then funnily enough, the game after all of this happened was against West Brom. Couldn't make that up. So I think he was left a little bit with pie on his face. He had to come out and backtrack on his comments. He kind of said, they were a bit of a joke that went wrong. I never took it seriously. I thought when people said, oh, you linked with West Brom, I thought they were having me on and it was a joke. So I just played back. And it's like, mate, come on. We won yesterday.
And then you've not won since either. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
this was obviously after the West Brom game that these comments were made. And then we go to Cardiff. And for me, I was like, okay, he said all this now. Show us that it was nothing and nothing actually happened. This game's important. I was like, look, even if we don't win it, a good performance shows he's still got the squad. It shows he's still in control. But to go up there and lose 4-0, and it was 0-0 at half time. And I watched the first half. I was working, luckily. Watched the first half on my break. Second half came around, and I just knew going back from my lunch, I was like, we're not winning that game. I work with a Cardiff fan, and I went down to him and I was like, yeah, you're going to win this. He's like, no, we're not. It's not as simple as that, because he didn't have any confidence either. Lo and behold, like 3 minutes after half time, pop up on my phone, 1-0. I was like, see, I told you. It's like, you were all over us going into half time. If your manager had anything about you, all he'd say is, come at them. They're going to leak goals. And we did. We conceded 4, and that's just not good enough. So I was shocked he kept his job. A couple more thumpings after that. We got thumped at Norwich as well. So, like, performance against Bristol just gone was definitely well needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was that's your first win since like you said, the speculation. So
yeah,
let's talk about the upcoming fixture. Now, I live in London and made the drive up to go. It was the first time I thought, you know what, I'll not stay at my mum's. I'll drive up, watch the game, and drive back. Takes about 3.5 hours, depending on what type of run it is. And then driving back was a god awful M1, which on a 50-mile-an-hour limit, or just shut in various areas. And I went all that way for a bullshit 0-0 draw. It was one of the dourest, awful games of football I've ever watched. However, and what I want to get to you, we've beat you once in about 17 years now. I think it is. I think since 2008. Let me get the statistics up here. So 2008 was when we started regularly playing you. You know what I mean? But if you want to be specific, we've only beat you once in 41 years.
That's a bit nuts. We had a similar stat like that against Coventry recently, and they've managed to correct it.
Yeah. So is there a part of you that goes, we're a bit of a bogey team for them, let's go and get our obligatory points off Sheffield Wednesday?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think in the recent history of that 41 years, I think we've probably been on the better end of the Football League. So perhaps when we played each other, maybe we have, been the favourites, or like more often than not had the better squad. Like we got relegated from Premier, come up from League One, that sort of meeting. So in terms of where our trajectory is, but I think now, it's far more even.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, well, you're ahead of us in the table at the moment, aren't you? So maybe not so much of that scenario anymore. I think maybe the tides have turned a little bit. We had a good time. You said 2008 just now. That's when we were on our way up to the Premier League. We had really good momentum, and we were rocketing up the Football League. Obviously spent some time up there. We were there for 7 years. So then even when we came back down, we were still a club that got relegated from the Premier League, who had been there for 7 years. So you have that label for a couple of seasons until you end up stuck in the Championship. And I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. So
yeah, I mean, there's some big breaks in those statistics there. I mean, 1984 to 2008, we didn't play each other.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, when you were bouncing around the Premier League et al., there was about 10 years we didn't play each other in the league. But again, no points for Sheffield Wednesday in that period. The only time we chalked up a win was 6 years. 6 years we've actually beat you for the first time in 41 calendar years. So I tell you what, then before we wrap this up, let's do a score prediction. How are you feeling about it?
I feel better after we beat Bristol. I think there was it wasn't just the result. The team actually really worked hard, and there was a lot of passion and determination on the pitch that looked like been missing for the last month. Don't know where it come from all of a sudden. Don't know whether they've all rallied behind the bad transfer window. We didn't really see it at our home match, the one before against Coventry, which was also after the window closed, and of course we lost Matt Grimes to them. But for whatever reason, they managed to come out against Bristol and really show that they are together, I guess. So I could see this one being like a draw. I think maybe like a 1-1. I think we're going back to try and tighten things up a bit. We've changed the way that we're playing a little bit because of Grimes not being here anymore. and we've obviously signed O'Brien from, where did we sign him from now? Nottingham Forest, was it?
Yeah.
On loan. Yeah. He's a different sort of player to Grimes. You know, he offers a different sort of threat in midfield. So I think I'm not saying we don't pass it anymore, but I think we're trying to add a little bit more directness so that we're not just a passing team, because Grimes was so instrumental in that. So I think we're in transition again. We were in transition anyway, and now we're retransitioning in transition. So yeah.
Well, I think a score draw is probably sensible. We're not blowing teams away at Hillsborough, and a 1-1 draw seems to be what the regular occurrence is, much to our chagrin. Listen, Luke, from SwansCast, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot for joining me this evening.
That's okay.
Don't forget to press the like, subscribe button if you are listening. I always forget to say that, Luke. I get told off because I feel weird saying it. You know what I mean?
I literally always forget and hardly ever say it, to be honest.
Because as daft it sounds when I'm watching a YouTube video and the guy goes, "Don't forget to press like and subscribe," I switch off. So,
yeah, I'm the same. But apparently the call to action does help. So
does it?
Yeah, apparently the statistics say it helps. But I'm the same as you.
I can't say it. I find it really bad. But listen, I'll see you on the other side. See you in a bit. Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday week, bringing you football analysis.
He came in. I think he scored a goal.
Bringing you banter.
Yeah.
Bringing you responsible life hacks.
Met you wonderful souls at 10 a.m. for some shots.
The Wednesday week. 1, 2, 3, 4 live. Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there for podcasts, etc.
The Wednesday week 24-25 season. Join us.
Put on your podcast.